The giant. Actually, what's he doing, Mike?
I don't
He's
know.
playing with balls, balls.
He's playing with balls, balls. He's playing
He's playing with balls, balls, right? All right. Greetings, greetings, greetings. Our Mystics of the 40th Parallel family and community. Yeah. We've been out of commission for a minute. It's been a while. What, maybe 2-3 months, Mike?
It feels even longer than that.
It really
I
does.
can't remember when the last time. I don't know when the last time we did. I want to say I was in Lancaster the last time we met. We met via the Zoom.
Yes. Yeah, it's been a minute. But you know, I'm thankful to be back, be forward. How about yourself?
Oh, undoubtedly am I thankful.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's a little
yeah.
bit different. I'm not on the 40th today. I'm down in
Uh,
Florida.
uh,
I'm way down south.
all right. What, you on the 33rd or something like that?
I think I'm
The
further south than
30th?
that. I think I'm
Uh,
close to the 30th. I don't know for fact where it is, but I know it's south of 33. I'm
all
pretty
right.
certain that's Atlanta.
Wow. Oh, yeah, you're right. And Columbia and all of that. That's the 33rd. Well, wow. So you're getting some good sun rays?
I'm getting some good sun rays. It feels good to be out of the 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 Pennsylvania overcast.
Yeah, you see, I still got my hoodie on and I'm
Yeah, I see you
indoors. So
got it.
you know what it is up here on the 40th right now, But yeah. That's good. Well, we got something for him today though, don't we?
Yes, we do. Yes, we
And it's
do.
gonna
This is
make it's
this
gonna
is
be worth the wait. This
this
is
is
this,
what we're going to be doing is we're going to be reflecting on a face to face we did. What was that? Maybe like a full lunation ago.
yeah, it's maybe about 4 weeks ago. Yes. Where Mike came and hung out with me in Philly and we toured what I would name or call the Lenape 9-mile road to hell. And so, if you're familiar with the Great Mystery Philadelphia, we named the Ben Franklin Parkway the Lenape Road to Hell. Because if you study the art, archetype symbols, and architecture, starting at the Art Museum and ending up in City Hall, you see that that's what the Ben Franklin Parkway is. It's the Lenape Road to Hell. But I didn't realize that it's a culmination of a 9-mile road to hell that actually starts up here on my side of town in Chestnut Hill at the 40th parallel marker that we found. So I think we did that might have been the last episode we did actually,
Okay.
was the talking about the 40th parallel marker that we found in Philly. Because, at first we didn't think that there was one in the city. Uh, but bang, there was one, not where the 40th parallel begins, but up in, I guess, what in Rosicrucian uh, symbolism would be the 40th parallel in the wilderness,
Yeah.
which what we would say that would be the code word, the code that the Order of the Rosy Cross uses to designate the place that if you study the Book of Enoch, you study the Table of Nations and, you know, different ancient sources, prophetic sources, the place where you would be able to safely observe the fulfillment of millennial prophecy, you know? we say Judgment Day.
Mhm.
So they got a 40th parallel marker up there. But was so bugged out, Mike. So I was shown the marker while I was doing a Mounds of Lenape tour, right? The marker's like 1 block from one of the destinations we go to. And I was so gassed, so hyped, so like, holy shit, excuse me, a 40th parallel marker. I only looked at one side of the marker, you know? And I went back one day to just study it some more, right? And lo and behold, on the other side of it, can you see it, Mike?
I see it.
All right. Lo and behold, on the other side of the marker that said 40th parallel, there, it said 9 miles to Philadelphia. So I know there are a lot of 9 mile roads around the world. Jamaica got a 9 mile road. Uh, England got a 9 mile road. There's maybe 3 or 4 9 mile roads here in the US. And I usually associate the 9 mile roads with a road that has something to do with the 9 muses, right? And the 9 muses, like we say, Philadelphia is a museum without walls, which means the language of the muses is throughout this city, you know? And that uh the the order that created the Philadelphia Museum of Art, the order Ben Franklin was a member of, the order that uh, really connects France and Paris with the United States, right? It's the order of the 9 muses. So I said, man, this 9 mile road is significant. And came to realize, like, oh, you know what this is? This is the Lenape 9 mile road to hell. Because when you study what's on this 9 mile road to Philadelphia, number one, this marker right here, Mike, is the cheat code. If we had found this first, like a lot of what we researched wouldn't even really be a mystery. It wouldn't have, like, you know, it would have been overtly obvious what we're looking at, because the Hermit's Cave, Lover's Leap, the I Am Temple, and Monastery Stables, Spirit of Enterprise, so many things that we've looked at and have researched, just knowing that, yo, there's a mystery associated with this thing. We need to see what it is. And we knew somehow these mysteries was all tying together, but how?
Yeah.
This marker revealed it, you know? It revealed that, yo, it's all tied together because it's a story telling the Lenape 9 mile road to hell. And so what? He was fortunate enough that uh, you were able to come and see it live and direct. And we did this 9 mile road to hell tour, and it was an enjoyable day. I even learned more. I learned more every time I go to these destinations with other enlightened ones, So, what were your
Can I
thoughts on the day?
yes. So I've seen a picture of this from this marker from previous presentations which you've done. So when I came to see it with my own eyes in the flesh, there was a part of me which was like, "Oh, I know what this is." But I was very, very surprised, or surprise isn't the right word. It took on a greater meaning or a greater significance, or I could see it more clearly once I saw it in person.
Mm,
So a couple things. So in my opinion, we, well, I'll just begin with this, like the shape of it, right? It's got a very unique shape, and it's a very to me, it looks like a gravestone, like particularly
mm.
an old gravestone, the proportions of the height to width and then the rounded top. Um, and you're absolutely right. It's the fact that there are two sides of this stone marker. One side, which we're looking at right now, which says 9 miles to Phila, and then 1939 is on the bottom. But what's very highlighted in this image is like the plays of the number nine. Like nine is written three times, and there's a three in there as well. So, like, just numerologically, like, nine is really emphasized. And then on the back side of it is where we see engraved the latitude and longitude of where that's located. So there's that level. But what to me, what I thought was first interesting, or what I was surprised to see, was that this marker, I'm not certain whether or not this would be considered someone's private property or not, but
Mm.
it was in a residential area of Chestnut Hill. And there was a sidewalk. It was at an intersection of two roads. I don't recall the names of the roads
Willow
off the top of
Grove, Willow Grove Avenue, and Lincoln Drive.
Willow Grove and Lincoln. And I was, just like wondering about like the just, who owns this? Is this someone, is this
It
the
is a
person who's
it appears like a random placement. Like,
on a
why
certain level?
yeah, it's not a park. It's not, like, why is this marker here? It's just a random corner.
Exactly.
That's what it
Exactly.
appears. That's what it appears to be.
That's what it appears, but like truth is self-evident. It exists.
Mm,
So like, and this isn't like some like however, whatever like the exoteric story of how it came to be, like there was a lot of thought and there was a lot that was put into it. Particularly 1939, they didn't have a GPS machine to get those Latin long directions, right?
right.
I mean, this thing is there's a lot of thought to that. So there was that level popped out. But then also what, and this is maybe larger, a larger an observation, which is a larger observation to our day together. Um, it had to do with, and you and I talked about this a little bit offline, was the amount of actual pieces of public artwork in Philadelphia. There are 5,000 pieces. And I was asking you throughout the day, I was like, what's this? What's this? And you're like, I don't know. Like, I haven't gone there yet. There's so much more to look at, was kind of, I think, maybe what your internal response was from my questions. But what my internal response was, listening to you say, I'm not certain, what jumped out at me was the your ability to follow that golden thread, or to hear that golden note, that throughout all of this, like, all of this data, these 5,000 points, like, you found that thread. And just to your point, if you would have found that marker before anything else, like, it wouldn't have had it wouldn't have had the same sort of, like, as you were saying, you were gassed, you were like, you were beside yourself. You're like, I can't believe that I found this here after everything. Like, I can't believe this is here waiting for me in this like incredibly random spot, like off, like, off of like a main road, and like in someone's, like, possibly their front yard or side yard. We found this, and there's like this element of, like, this really gets into this mystic perspective. It's like, who's writing this story?
Right.
you know where did this come from? It is so aligned, like, of the
Mm,
5,000 pieces, like,
mm.
you sussed out the ones that make the sense. And so to me, when we kicked off this day, beginning here, like, it was like almost like a trip down memory lane in a way.
Mm. And we do have footage from that. Let's drop some of that. Let's drop some footage of our time at the 40th marker. We're going to drop that in right here.
Tree.
Yeah, so yeah, man, this right here
Wow.
is the smoking gun of all the raw search we've been doing, which ultimately leads to the greatest mystery book called 40 Parallel in the Wilderness.
Okay.
The
Lady in the Wilderness.
Lady in the Wilderness, Johann Kelp, his greatest, Johann Kelp, that was his whole thing.
Right.
Like, we got to go find the 40th parallel in the wilderness. And that woman, the woman in the wilderness.
Right.
So what was that all about? And it is tied in with William Penn's Holy Experiment, where William Penn's prayer summarizes, he wanted to create a colony that if he could get along with the indigenous, he colonizes, right? His colony will be saved on Judgment Day. Okay?
William Penn.
William Penn. This is William Penn's prayer.
Right.
It's engraved on City Hall in Center City. We'll end up there today.
Okay.
All right? But I'm just summarizing.
Right.
That's basically, we'll read the actual prayer, but in summary, it's like, hey, God, if I could create a colony in which the gathered churches of London and the inhabitants I colonize, if we could get along, can my colony be saved on Judgment Day? But the unspoken dimension, the great mystery that is a part of that is that they studied prophecy. They studied geography. They studied the Table of Nations, right?
Okay.
And they identified the people who that prophecy, who, like, prophetically, they were going to be the ones to escape judgment.
Okay.
Just observe Judgment Day, but not actually receive a judgment.
Right.
And they also found the place where you were supposed to be able to observe judgment, watch judgment, and not catch it. Right?
Okay.
So the Order of the Rosy Cross, and this is like exemplified by Johann Kelp, the first member of the Rosy Cross to come.
Right.
They labeled that place the 40th parallel in the wilderness. Okay, that was their code for it.
Okay. The
Right.
place where you would go to observe judgment and not have to be on the receiving end
of Judgment Day, right? And the people that this, like in the Rosicrucian language,
right?
the people that prophecy was meant for, long and the short of it, was the woman in the wilderness. And that was the name of their order, Society of the Woman in the Wilderness.
So repeat that again. What do you mean by it was for the woman in the wilderness?
Like,
that was
if you studied prophecy,
okay,
and you studied the Table of Nations.
What do you mean by the Table of Nations?
Like Genesis and Exodus and Numbers,
where everything's listed.
They lit the Table of Nations.
Okay.
Yeah. Like who's who.
Right.
From Adam
onward.
The patriarchs.
Onward. Right. Okay, so if you study that, and
you study the Table of Nations, you study geography, you study prophecy.
Okay.
We're going, to identify who are the people that, the way they're named in the Table of the Nations. These is the ones going to receive grace on Judgment Day.
And this is the place.
And you study geography. And
right.
It's like, okay, where is, like I guess we could say the New Jerusalem is established.
Right.
There's a lot of prophetic
language
terms in the Bible you could use, but like I say, the way the Rosy Cross identified it.
Okay.
It's the 40th parallel and the wilderness being the place, and the people being the woman of the wilderness.
So the woman in the wilderness is a term which refers to like the people, who fit.
When you study Jane Lee, the Philadelphian prophetess, right, the woman who articulated the Philadelphian prophecies, because there was a Philadelphian society in Great Britain, before there was Philadelphia,
right.
And there was this woman named Jane Lee giving these prophecies. She too speaks of the woman of the wilderness. And like, this woman's place in prophecy. That, they had to come and be a part of her community.
Right.
The whole Philadelphian prophecies is basically saying, like, we got to find this woman in the wilderness and we got to live with her. We got to live amongst her. That's a quick summation of Jane Lee's prophecies, And so...
And she was a British woman or an English woman from what time period?
Had to be early 1700s.
Early 1700s,
She's a contemporary of William Markham.
Okay. Who was the first governor?
Yes.
Of the Pennsylvania colony.
Yes. William Markham and her ran circles. I even think William Markham manipulated Jane Lee. Through drugs and sex. She even, like, imagine you're a medium, you're a psychic.
Right.
You're sharing this prophetic speech.
Right.
But you had been traumatized and manipulated in what you're saying, right? And then in the middle of what you're saying, like, you snap out of that thing for a minute.
Right.
That happened to Jane Lee.
And
it's in the Philadelphian prophecies. Like, she says, hold up. I'm kind of summarizing. I can't quote it verbatim, you know? But at one point, she's like, hold up. Half the shit I'm saying is because I'm loose in my bed and drink and smoke and a lot of these prophecies I'm saying is manipulated. And to be honest, the New Jerusalem would have already come. It would have already happened if it wasn't for these characters' manipulation of history and prophecy. And then she snaps back in it.
And then she starts naming like the woman in the wilderness, which ultimately points to this area. Is that like literally where we are with Queen's Lane? Like as
if we study the clues of Johann Kelp in his life,
okay,
yes, what they call, so Philadelphia in general is known as indigenously as Shaxamoxie, where the kings meet.
right.
Right? But in my humble opinion, the real history, mystery, and prophecy, the real geomantic significant realm within Philadelphia, it's not where the kings meet, which is down by the Lenape-Hana, what we call today the Delaware, right?
The Delaware River.
Delaware River. Down there where they call Penn's Landing and Penn Treaty Park and all of that. That's not the geomantically significant region up here. And it's not where all the real history, mystery, and prophecy lives. It's up here in what is indigenously called Nitibong, which meant where the warriors meet.
Okay.
And meaning this is the land to defend.
Ah.
Right?
Okay.
And this is where the queens meet. We're gonna take a 9-mile journey into town, right?
And this is where it begins, right here.
Because it begins right here. Now, I'm all over the place, you guys excuse me, because I am excited having you here, right?
Right.
But I found this marker. I didn't find it.
Right.
This marker was revealed to me on one of our Mounds of Lenape-Hopa tours.
Okay.
Because we'll drive by here. I'm gonna use footage from the other tours.
Okay.
And just when we get on Zoom and kind of bring all this together, right?
All right.
But my Mound of Lenape-Hopa tour, one of the sites that we stopped is right there. Another's down that street a couple of blocks. We're in the area of a mound complex where there's a whole bunch of mounds like all up around here, right? Some are masquerading as a cricket club, some are masquerading as a golf course, some are masquerading as water tower, right? And some are just like this park up here would be like Point Paradise. This is a paradisical park right here, meaning there's a spring. The Monashoni Creek springs out of the earth in this park right here. It makes a beautiful lake.
That's one where we went to.
We've been here.
Yeah, I've been there. I've been to the water tower. I've been to the sites. Right.
You've been on this tour.
Right,
That's what I'm saying. You know all the mounds that are up here.
I've been to the mounds. I don't know the mounds.
Well, you've been, So, for them to put a 40th parallel marker here is super, number one, because it affirms all our roster.
Right.
And they're saying, because this is the wilderness.
Right.
This park embodies the wilderness. The mounds up here, the way they got the archetype symbols up here. This is, it's Point Paradise. It's the wilderness.
Right.
The 40th parallel doesn't start here. The 40th parallel starts about 7 miles, 6 miles south of here. So why not put a 40th parallel marker where it actually starts?
Right.
They put it up here because they're saying this is the 40th parallel in the wilderness. Right? So we're on the mound tour and my good brother Luke, salute brother Luke, he says, yo Rosh, there's a 40th parallel marker right down there. And I was like, nah, I ain't know that. And so we came here, bang, wow, we're so surprised and amazed. Yeah, it is. I was so gassed, I was so geeked. Right. I never even looked on the other side. I only like focused on the 40th parallel side, right? So then,
What is the insignia above?
I think the dots and heraldry have to do with papal heraldry.
Okay.
Heraldry of popes.
Right.
It looks very similar to the University of
That's
Pennsylvania
what I was
logo.
thinking. The UPenn.
It does.
The UPenn.
But now UPenn's heraldry is highlighted by dolphins.
By dolphins?
Dolphins. A lot tying into that French dolphin.
Dauphin County, which is where Harrisburg is.
Yeah, and Philadelphia, the Dolphins. Ben
Right.
Franklin was a dolphin.
Right.
So it's not UPenn's heraldry. And again, I think if you look
And
up,
Dauphin means son of the king, the French
in
monarch.
French,
It's the
exactly.
French monarch.
Exactly. I think dots in heraldry, a trinity of dots,
Okay.
reference a papal bloodline.
Papal bloodline, okay.
Yes. But now, when I came up here, because I was curious, wow, I knew it wasn't the 40th parallel. I wanted to figure out where it is exactly in latitude.
Okay.
Then I came up, and then I realized, oh my God, 9 miles to Philly.
Right.
This is beginning a 9-mile road,
Right.
which again is a reaffirmation
Mm-hmm.
of all of our research, because what this does
Mm-hmm.
is connects Point Paradise,
Mhm.
the wilderness,
Mm-hmm.
to what I termed in the Great Mystery of Philadelphia, the Lenape Road to Hell, the Ben Franklin Parkway,
Okay.
and all of the art, architecture, and archetype symbols that are on that Ben Franklin Parkway, you know, with the Greco temple to the muses, the 9 muses, right? The order that founded the art museum, Order of the 9 Sisters, right?
Right.
And who are the muses?
Right.
This is
Also the Pleiades, right?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Isn't the Pleiades 9 or 7? It's
7.
7. It's 7. 7
Okay.
sisters. Okay. Okay.
The 9 muses create the language that they conceal their mysteries.
The arts.
The arts, archetype symbols, architecture, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So this 9-mile road,
Mm-hmm.
how it says 9 miles to Philly,
Right.
it's connecting the whole story we've been researching, because when we look at it, almost every site we have visited and talked about,
Mm-hmm.
the I Am Temple,
Right.
the Hermit's Cave, Lover's Leap, Spirit of Enterprise, the Art Museum, Rodin Museum, Logan Circle, City Hall. This is all one road,
One road.
9 miles,
Starting here.
starting here.
All right.
So that's what we're going to do today.
Let's go do it.
We're going to see this great mystery that they, you know, like, if I had known about the marker before we started this journey,
Right.
we would have had the cheat code. Right?
But we had to discover it for ourselves.
We had to discover it for ourselves,
Right.
you know? So
Right.
we're going to take this 9-mile journey.
All right.
All
Let's do
right?
it.
Did you have any other questions?
I'm ready to go.
All right. Yes, sir. I think the sun's going to come out. That's what the forecast of the day. All right. So, yeah, we're back from that. So here I got the. Can you see my screen, Mike?
I got your screen.
All right. So here in blue, the one blue marker here on this map is where the 40th parallel marker is, right? And it's up here in an area that, right, with this marker here, we can confirm this is supposed to be the 40th parallel in the wilderness, right? And
Hmm.
we know when when William Penn founded Penn's Philadelphia, which is down here, he thought he was on the 40th parallel, but he wasn't. He was on the 39th, right? Here's where the 40th parallel actually begins in relationship to everything. So everything down here from the Philadelphia Museum of Art going down, that's Penn's Philly, that's on the 39th parallel. Here we have the 40th parallel cusp right here, right? But look where they got the marker. Miles above where the cusp actually is, right? Why is that?
Deep in the wilderness.
Because this is the wilderness, yeah.
And
And
not just any of the wilderness, it's like the highest point.
you're right. We're at the heights of the city up here. And why we do the mounds of Lenape-Hoken tour up here is because there's many things up here masquerade. There are many mounds up here masquerading as other things, such as the Water Tower Rec Center, Pastorius Park. This is where we were going when my good brother Luke pointed out, hey, there's a 40th marker right here. Pastorius Park is a park that, like when you study it, the park itself is supposed to be a microcosm of paradise. It's got mounds, it's got a spring where water is springing out from, bubbling up from the fountain of the earth. It's got a pond where turtles and ducks and, you know, uh, animals that kind of embody the Americas, the turtle specifically being Turtle Island, right? America's being Turtle Island. All of these iconic animals reside in this park, right? But also the Philadelphia Cricket Club and the St. Martin's Golf Course, which are they're mounds in disguise, you know? And then you go and you see them with your own eyes, it's like, oh, there's no denying, that they've kept the landscape, they've kept the mounds as a part of the contemporary urban landscape, but you got to really know what you're looking at to recognize it. So, yeah, this is paradise. This is Point Paradise. You also got the Tedescan statue that's called Looking West, where Tedescan and Scout's pose has been put on top of the grandmother's council rock, looking west. Tedescan being the sachem who they say signed off on the Treaty of Easton, which forced the Lenape Trail of Tears and their trek west beyond the Alleghenies. So the 40th parallel marker is up here with all of these, and we've talked about all of these in different episodes.
Right.
But like, yeah, you can see, look at all the other destinations that are on this 9 Mile road. You got the Hermit's Cave. You got Lover's Leap, because that's right here next to Hermit's Cave. Paradise Point. We went to Paradise Point too. We're gonna, definitely talk about this, but this is in East Falls, at the East Falls Bridge. And this is what I guess the Lenape would call Paradise Point. This is the area where they say this was the last place in Philadelphia that the Lenape deserted, that they abandoned when they just couldn't live here anymore. And this is the place of, it's described the abundance of fishing and the fertility of the soil here. This was what the ancients, when you read the book of Enoch, when you read different descriptions of Lenapehoking and Paradise Point, why is the Delaware Bay, where ultimately the confluence of all these waters with the ocean is? There's a spot there called what? Paradise Point, America's first resort. Well, United States first resort. Right there, Cape May. I think it's all a legacy of this, because this is where the ancients said, yo, this is paradise, you know? And we'll get more into that. But we
Can I
see
pause you? Can I pause
that,
you for a moment?
please.
So I want to put into context, like what's happening in real time, because I think that is, to me, is the most significant part of these series. What you and I are doing, and the witnesses that are participating as well. And so there's a bringing to light of, like, to the typical mainstream contemporary mind. If you would say, like, yeah, right here in East Falls on the Schuylkill, this is paradise. This is paradise. Like, people think like you're nuts,
You're
right?
crazy if you
Because
look
they
at it
can't,
today. Yeah.
right, because they can't see past the state it currently is in. And by bringing into conscious awareness, not just you, because something happens when, like, there's nodal points, like, when it's one mind connected to another mind. Now we got a nodal point where the energy is going, and then we got a witness right on top of, like, that nodal point. Like, that's where magnetism begins to happen. So, like, we're bringing in magnetism to to like the what has been done. And that comes with, like, you take this however you want to go and take this, but that comes with, like, there's some friction with this. We saw friction on our tour, right? Like, right after I left, right after Christy and I left, like, there was friction in Germantown. And
That's
then
right.
and now we're talking about right now, um this is the Schuylkill. Right now, it's not exactly the same, but we had this conversation offline, like, just a handful of days before this recording. There was like relative to the area, like a major chemical spill in the waterways.
That's right. We're dealing with
And
that
so,
right
like,
now.
right, and we're dealing with that right now. So, like, these energies, I'm not saying like one is like caused by the other, like, logically. I'm saying it's caused on that mystical level, which is deeper than the rational logic. And so, like, as we're bringing into awareness, like, the real beauty of this area, we're talking about the Schuylkill right here, but, like, the Delaware and the Delaware Bay, and, as you said, Cape May, and this entire general area, which was once, like, pristine and paradise, like this, like, the ball energy, if you will, keeps on, like, burping up.
Mm, mm. Yes. Yes. And one other thing I do want to point out, the original Paradise Point is right at the 40th parallel, the
Mm,
actual 40th parallel cusp, you know? But you mentioned that ball energy bubbling up. Once you're on the 39th parallel, what's the next thing we walk up on? The spirit of enterprise. Ball, you know, ball and
central.
art right there. And then ending up at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. So we're gonna we're gonna share our 9 mile journey. Okay, so we I had already had the opportunity to take you to the Hermit's Cave and Lover's Leap and all of those things. What was your thoughts on that on I know those were prior tours, but what were your thoughts being in that area?
So I was very surprised. Like I don't know Philadelphia that well. I've been to Philadelphia before, and I was surprised to see to see the Wissahickon, like to put the park, to walk through it. And then obviously our experience there was very rich. It was rich from the collection of people who were on the tour with us, but then also our experience at the I Am Temple, but then also like the whole thing, the path which we took going underneath that bridge to then go into the Hermit's Cave.
Right.
Um, and I remember getting turned around in there. I usually have a pretty good sense of direction when I'm outside, and I remember walking back, like getting turned around on some of those trails. Like I'm not certain which direction I was, which that doesn't normally happen to me. So the fact that that occurred, I usually look at that as an indication, like something's messing with my internal compass.
Interesting.
Now, and then this piece which you're showing right now, I asked you about that before we started recording. I saw that when you were screen sharing. I was like, "What's that image?" I found that, and you're pulling it up right now. I think that's very telling as to the story which we're bringing light to.
Yeah. So this is graffiti. It's not even like technically public art, right? But the placement of it is very significant because it's literally the midpoint between Hermit's Cave and Lover's Leap. And I'm not going to get spun out in the story right here, right now, because I think we've already covered it. And those who's been, you know, keeping up
Okay.
with our 40th parallel series, they already know the story where the Hermit's Cave, this is where the first Rosicrucian, Johann Kelp, lived. And Johann Kelp was a mystic. He was able to manifest powers. And Mike, just like myself, if we met a man who could manifest some mystical powers right in front of our face, he would kind of automatically have levels of respect and confidence in us, as opposed to someone who couldn't. We'd say, yo, the God force is strong within this man. He must be well disciplined. He's tapped in on a lot of levels, right? Kelp's mystical powers earned him access to the queen goddess Winona, which not a lot of colonists, they didn't have that access, right? So it's not coincidence. I can't, you can't tell me it's coincidence that the Hermit's Cave and Lover's Leap, which is more than likely the place where the queen goddess Winona, her life was ended, that they're so close to one another, you know? Less than what do you say, maybe a half
Yeah.
mile walking distance, like what, 5-minute walk. And this piece of graffiti appeared right at the midpoint where you have a woman. She appears traumatized. She appears stunned. Look at her eyes. She's tripping. Like, what? What? Right? But we could tell. How do we know she's a divine being? She got an aura. Right? But in her trauma, in her shock, in her disbelief, she's stunned to the point where she's supporting, embracing, upholding an obvious demonic entity. Man, I think this speaks so much. If someone could capture the energy of this land and make it into some graffiti, I don't think it would be more profound than this. You know, it really speaks to what you feel in this part of uh of the Wissahickon, you know? And so I definitely wanted to just show that. And right, like I say, maybe we will drop some footage or some images of us in this region, you know, to refresh different ones, right? But where'd my map go? All right.
Yep.
So this is this area of the 9 Mile Road. To hell, right? If we say this is the Lenape 9 Mile Road to hell, and we seeing graffiti of that nature on it, it's like, yeah, man, it's consistency. So here, our next destination was Paradise Point, and I think we do have some footage of this. You want to drop that in now? Or if you
Definitely.
have something you want to say, more you want to say about
I don't have
Paradise
anything to
Point?
add. No.
All right, boom, we're going to drop that in.
Here, capture Indian Queen Lane. Did you want to record?
Yeah. Where is the sign?
Right here.
Oh my gosh, I'm like looking out there. We're right underneath it like a tree.
All right, so here we are at Indian Queen Lane at what's today called the Schuylkill. It's my understanding back in the day the river was called the Mania, which means place we come to drink. So that was the significance of, well, one of the significances of this area. Why we came here? Because it's my overstanding that this was Point Paradise.
Where we're sitting right here.
Where we are right here.
This was it.
This was it. This was, and it's hard to believe now, with all of the litter and urban landscape. This is Point Paradise. This was, when we get on the Zoom, we're going to read the ancient accounts of this land, right? But ultimately, what made this Point Paradise, before they built the dam, further down. Dam is at the Philadelphia Museum of Art.
Okay.
That was America's first utility.
Okay.
The Philadelphia Water Works. And they built a dam there to collect water, right? And but what the tragic result of it was it raised the level of the Schuylkill higher than the waterfall that used to be here. This neighborhood today is called East Falls. And it was called East Falls because there was a very large waterfall here that were created by rock formations that were described like the rocks we visited on the Schuylkill. This was described as a natural resort that had rocks where you could kind of sit and almost like you were sitting on a throne. But also what made the rock significant, beyond the thunderous roar of the falls, because they said the falls could be heard like a mile away.
Wow.
Right? That's how it's described as. But it created a natural spawning ground for migrating fish coming up out of the Atlantic, out of the, up the Delaware Bay, then up the Schuylkill, and they would come up here and spawn to the degree that, like, it was described like you could catch hundreds or even thousands of fish a day. So
I'm getting hungry just thinking about that.
right. Between the rock formations creating natural seats, and you had asked about petroglyphs.
Yes.
There is recorded that there was a formation in the rocks that was called the Devil's Foot. It was like a foot imprint, but like a larger foot. We saw things like that on the Susquehanna too. But there was, so it's not a petroglyph technically,
Right.
but it was a mark on the rock that had some acclaim.
And the rocks were like the rocks.
Well, let's walk over there.
Oh, you can see them. Did you
well,
mean?
no, you can't see them anymore. They're all
they're
buried.
underwater. Yeah.
It's all underwater. So, like I say, before the dam, this was like the most important place for the Lenape. They say the Lenape of Philadelphia, this was the last place they deserted. The ones that were living free and didn't integrate into the colonial society, this was the last place that they deserted. Again, because this is where the Queen lived, right? Indian Queen Lane. It's my understanding that right there on that corner, the Indian Queen had a house. Okay, and that's how it got that name. And
Is that what we're looking at when we're up there?
Like up.
right up that street.
Yeah, I was looking at all the places.
So this bridge right here, this is called the East Falls Bridge, right? It marks the place where the falls were.
Oh wow.
So those rocks that we were talking about, they're under that bridge right there.
Okay. And they're like the rocks on the Susquehanna or on the
Yes,
Schuylkill?
they are.
Susquehanna.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
When we edit all this together, we're going to read the account. We're going to read the description of this place and its significance to the Lenape. I don't know. Do y'all want to walk across, or is this vista good enough? I'll leave it to y'all.
I think this vista's good. We want to keep moving.
Yeah, I can see
All
it.
right, so what we're going to do,
Love it.
we're going to drive down. This is Kelly Drive here, named after John B. Kelly, who was an Olympian. He was an industrialist. He's the father of Grace Kelly. And he does play a significant role in the great mystery. We're not going to get all into it here. But we're going to drive down Kelly Drive to where the 40th parallel actually starts. And we're also going to check out the Spirit of Enterprise, because that's right there.
All right.
Okay.
All right?
All right, so now in contrast, like you say, if we look at East Falls today, it's almost impossible to imagine this place being paradise, right? I do want to I want to share some accounts. I want to share some accounts of this land. so that we could understand how much of a paradise it used to be. Okay, so this is the Falls of Schuylkill, right, where East Falls gets its name, was one day a place of much notoriety, and there are many interesting facts of a historic nature connected with it, which few persons of this age are aware of. Even its ancient name, which it bore for many years, Fort St. David's, seems to be entirely lost and forgotten. This name was given to the village and adopted by the inhabitants near the commencement of the last century by a number of gentlemen who built a fishing house there and formed themselves into a society under the name and title Fort St. David's. Okay, we'll skip that. In the early history of the falls, so now they're talking about this rock that is now you can't access this rock now because when they built the dam for the Philadelphia Waterworks down by the Art Museum, it raised the water table of the Schuylkill such that it now covers the rock. So that's why, you know, you can't hear the falls or see the falls, but we know this neighborhood is called East Falls or the Falls of Schuylkill, you know? So this long rock I well remember and have often, when a boy, fished from it. It extended from the foot of the hill to about 2/3 the distance across the river, forming a complete natural dam, a part of it overhanging on the lower side. In high freshets of water flowed over it and made a beautiful cascade. At other times, it forced the river into a narrow channel on the western sides, through which it ran with great rapidity and with much noise, falling some 5 or 6 feet in a distance of about 150 yards, and can be heard at a distance of from 1 to 5 miles. So that's pretty tumultuous water. If the
Yeah.
falls could be heard at least a mile away, you know, and depending on the torrent, maybe 5. According to the state of the river and the winds, there was a very singular and curious impression or indentation on the part of this rock that attracted many persons there to view it. It was apparently an impression of an immense human foot, over 2 feet long, and sunk some 6 inches in the rock. It showed the heel, hollow of the instep, ball of the foot, and toes. It was called by the people in the neighborhood the Devil's Foot, and there were some superstitions in reference to it. Okay? So when I hear that, I can't help but think when you took me to the Susquehanna, what's the name of those rocks?
Those petroglyphs?
No, not the petroglyphs, the
Oh, the at Falmouth.
Falmouth, yes, Falmouth rocks, how there were looked like foot impressions and just rocks that, you know, they had so much unique characteristics to it. You just had to go and explore it, you know? Sounds very similar to that.
And I'm trying to find right now, there's an actual petroglyph of a human foot.
Huh.
I don't know. I don't know if we're gonna be if it's gonna let me see if I can get it for you.
While you're looking, I'm gonna continue. Some of these,
All right, so I found it. Let me show you right now why that statement is fresh. All
and
right, so
I
this
took
here,
mine off.
did it share?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a slide of different, these are the petroglyphs in the Susquehanna. So these are the different rocks. These are some of the petroglyphs. And then this one right here which I've always found the most interesting one. Do you see this? That's a human foot
Uh,
right there.
yeah,
And when you
I see
stand
it.
it,
I see the
when
toes
you
and
when you stand in that one, let's where is that one? That puts you looking upstream from this, the Susquehanna right here. If you stand in the direction of that foot marker, you look upstream of the confluence of the Conestoga, which brings you directly to the location of the Ephrata Cloister. If you were to follow it, the Ephrata Cloister is on this waterway.
yes,
So I guess the point I'm just trying to make right here is maybe a consistency of
yes.
this idea of actual foot imprints into the stones. There's the other petroglyphs on the rocks, they're not like human feet cutouts. They look like more traditional petroglyphs. And the one which I just showed you does not seem to be as dramatic in scope, 2 feet long and 6 inches deep into the rock. But nonetheless, they're both found on these significant rocks in the water. And one of the way I've heard this by other people describing the land between the Delaware and the Susquehanna as that is the wilderness.
Mm, yes,
And
that's
so,
right.
I mean,
I could see that. Even how Amish tradition is so strong and preserved there. Like they live in that wilderness life, you know? I could
correct.
see it. Yes,
So going with the reading of this, this is
sure.
fascinating. And this
All right. So now, all right. So now, there were many other holes or pots, as they were called, in the rocks, caused by ages of agitation from stones and gravel, which the water, when flowing over them, kept in agitation. Some of these pots are still to be seen on part of the long rock remaining and not covered by the water. There was a tradition that they were used by the Indians for pounding corn in. That's why I wanted to point this out because we saw the same thing on the Susquehanna.
yes, we
Large,
did.
uh, looked uh, like a pot, a circular pot that, right, you could throw some grain in and pound it out and, make a flour. Okay, so, yeah. What, look right here. Doesn't this look like a formation that would be ideal for pounding maize?
Those formations, like yes, for the short answer. But what I'm really blown away by right now is the parallel, if you will, between the pothole, what are described by geologists as potholes, and all of these markings within the stones. And how distinct, and how when people see them, they're like, this is uncommon. It is just like a basic in human instinct to realize there's something special, and that we're seeing them both at the 40th parallel and the two parallel rivers, the Lenepehana and the Susquehanna, is yeah, you're blowing my mind.
All right, let's listen to this abundance, man. Listen to the abundance. Now, the thing with that rock that he was describing early on, again, this rock has been submerged since 1822 when the Philadelphia Waterworks, those who've been following my research know how significant of a place that is. And that's where the statue at Eakins Oval, where the Queen Goddess, that what we're decoding, this is where this at. When the Philadelphia Waterworks was built in 1822, it submerged this rock. But the significance of this rock was that the way it formed a semi-natural dam hole. So listen to some of the accounts of the type and amount of fish that were caught here. In his younger days, he has told me he could often catch with a dip net 3,000 catfish in one night. He sold them in 2 shillings a hundred. The perch and rockfish were numerous and large. Often he caught 30 to 80 pounds of a morning with a hook and line. He used to catch fish for the fishing company of Safe Davis, There was nothing extraordinary in Mr. Schrunk's catching 3,000 catfish in a night. I dare say there are persons still living in the neighborhood who have taken more than that number reportedly, and that so as late as 1817. I have seen men in one scoop of the dip net have it so full that these catfish as to be unable to lift them in a boat, but were obliged to take them out with their hands and other contrivances. There were a number of persons at the falls who in the fishing seasons lasting some 3 months made enough by catching shad in a simple hoop or dip net to support their families for a whole year. They anchored or fastened to the rocks in the rapids the small boats from which they fished. Some of the particular stations were more valuable than others. That's just a good example of, oh, okay, here's a little more. On one occasion, I saw them with one sweep catch 430 fine shad, and saw besides many escape from the scene. All right? It's just showing you how, like, super abundant this land where the queens meet was, you know? And we're going to go to one last section here before we wrap this up. And there's a description of this land and what it meant to the Lenape. Tradition says, and I have no doubt of the fact, that the Falls of Schuylkill was the last place deserted by the Indians who inhabited this part of the country. So Shaksamax and Lenape Hoken, what was the last part where it was like, damn, y'all, we can't live with y'all. As you know, we've been living here 13,000 years. But we can't live with y'all no more. The last place deserted was right here. It being the head of tide water and consequently such fine fishing ground. And this, you know, had a peculiar attraction to them. That it must have been a great resort of theirs. Now, Mike, when you took me to them rocks in the Susquehanna, that's what you and Jesse both said.
That's what I've been saying since the first time I put my feet there. I was like, at one point, this was a resort. I can see it as a place where people came to recreate, to recreate.
Well, look at this, man. Here it is for you, bruh.
It's the same thing. It is the same thing.
That it must have been a great resort of theirs is proved by the fact of the innumerable Indian relics that have been found in the vicinity. I have seen and found myself many stone axes, arrowheads, other instruments made of stone. Okay, so bang, bang. Okay, Ross Ben had to come with some receipts today because, you know, I've been making some wild claims, some wild statements in our 8+ episodes. So I wanted to show, like, yo, I'm not just shooting at the hip with this thing. Like, you know, it's grounded in historical documentation and research. Okay, so now, again, this great fishery of where the queens meet. The mystery of her cornucopia. This is what this cornucopia right here that she had in one hand, trident in the other. This is what was embodied in Nitibakunk, all right, where the queens meet. This land of East Falls, where Indian Queen Lane, Queen Street, and New Queen Lane all are. which is on Kelly Drive, which feeds right here to Eakins Oval too, right? Now, I didn't have any, I might do it in the autumn now that things are opened up. I didn't plan any tours in this part of the city for the summer because last year I took some folk down there and many of the sites of value was closed off and inaccessible because of the pandemic. So maybe by this autumn we'll get down here, okay? But again, this estuary of the Queen Goddess was destroyed in 1822 by the Philadelphia Waterworks. The dam at the waterworks prevented spawning fish from coming up the Manayunk River, also known today as the Schuylkill, right? And it also flooded the river, submerging the protruding rocks that made the natural fishing, okay? So again, the Queen holds the key to many of the mysteries of this land, okay? And we see, let's just look at this real quick because here is the up close where we can see the cloak dagger of the colonial assassin coming to take the Queen Goddess out. She's not looking at the cloak dagger, she's looking at the laurel that the other colonists flanking her is holding up, saying, hey, come and be a part of Rome, right? And so when we look, Queen Goddess, she's chained to her throne, she's chained to her power, she's chained to the scepter. She's flanked by maidens with what? Empty fishing nets. That's what I say, destroying that natural estuary was a big part of destroying the Queen Goddess Ununa's queendom. Then appeared who on the other side of the statue? Columbia, the new queen. Remember we said there's three streets up there. Columbia becomes the new queen. This is her, was the goddess of war, with the dead burying the dead. And wherever the dead are buried, she got multiple flagpoles. She sets up a war memorial. So here's the other side. Look, the dead burying the dead. This dude is dead man with a shovel. This dude is a dying man with a gun. Here's Columbia, the new queen, on top of the Philadelphia Waterworks. Okay, so here's her as the new queen. Columbia is the new queen once the old queen was assassinated. And remember we said a part of her taking over her queendom involved destroying her estuary, which was done by the creation of the Philadelphia Waterworks. This act enslaved who in Nile Valley we would call Happy. Happy, the river god that makes us happy, that brings abundance. The god of that, the god Happy that makes us happy, you know? Now he's enchained, he's imprisoned with the American bald eagle imprisoning him, and that is in contrast to someone I'm sure who's been following the series is familiar with, Prometheus, who is freeing himself from his bird captorer, the vulture, in front of the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Again, aligned with the statue of Eakins Oval and aligned with this statue on the Philadelphia Waterworks. So again, when we study the Queen holds the keys to some of the greatest mysteries of Philadelphia, particularly Lenape Hoken being an Ethiopian capital in the West.
Wow.
I'm not gonna bore everyone with the reading, I'm going to summarize by just saying that, again, this was the last, this history of the Wissahickon, history of Schuylkill Falls, excuse me. They recount that this was the last place the indigenous of this region left. And it was a source of abundance for them as far as fishing and water and agriculture. The Schuylkill River, its original name, its original Algonquin name was Manayunk, which means place where we go to drink. So this is where they got their food and water. It also feed Indian Queen Lane meets the Schuylkill / Manayunk River here too. And it's my understanding it's because this is where the Indian Queen lived.
Right.
You know, this was like her actual dwelling place. So, yeah. We just wanted to point those things out. And I would say, like, as far as East Falls, I think that area is so important. There should be a historic marker there telling the people about where they're at, you know? So the sacredness of this land could be honored and recognized a little more, right? But if we continue down the Schuylkill, what, a mile, you would get to where the actual 40th parallel cusp is. Might even be a half mile. You could see, if you stood at the 40th parallel cusp, you could see the East Falls Bridge. So space between them is not much at all. But then once you get on the 39th parallel, what's happening, Mike? What's the first thing we see on that 39th parallel?
Spirit of enterprise.
Spirit of enterprise. Oh man. Yo. I've taken a lot of people there, but I have to say I think I had the most fun with y'all. Let's drop that clip in, all right? Let's just drop that in right here.
probably this is multi-generational.
Absolutely. It's big money.
This is big money. This is stuff big money likes, right?
Yes.
And it's like it's paid homage to all of the workers.
Yeah.
Right? It's like there's nothing here about the banker. There's nothing here like about the industrialist. This is like this is the miner, and this is the slave, the plowman.
Yes.
Right? Like it's like here. This is thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for all.
Made that insight.
It's a gaslight.
Frontiers.
Right.
Frontiersmen.
Right. Like thank you for doing our bidding.
Yes.
And like all of this like out of context sort of quotes. Moving out towards the west of the new free land, as we just forced like, the people who lived here before off their land, and now we're going to continue to go west for our free land.
Yeah. See, I'm going to tell you, that was a big part of Worcester's mission.
Okay.
Okay, LaSalle are the LaSalle explorers.
Okay.
I told you, John B. Kelly, we're on Kelly Drive. I think John B. Kelly was one of Worcester's most greatest accomplishments.
Okay.
As a eugenicist. The Kellys represent the pinnacle of eugenics.
Right.
Okay? So then when you see a quote like that, where it's like America is, and see Worcester, his whole thing was taking over the West.
Okay.
So again, we got to ultimately see this as a vision of Caspar Wistar. Caspar Wistar is one of the most unsung. Like when people talk about conspiracy theories and who's who and the Masons.
He's the guy you don't know.
He's the guy you don't know, Caspar Wistar. But when you see something like this, America's West, and away, the white bird and all of that, this is his vision manifested. This is Caspar Wistar's fingerprint. And all of this is what's surrounding the spirit of enterprise.
So it's up to freedom. Expanding the continent. There's no freedom. There's no freedom in this. This is a taking.
Yes. But this is what's feeding the spirit of enterprise.
Yes.
This is what's going to empower them retaking Jerusalem. Like even today, how it's like, how come all of our tax money's going to Israel and going to Ukraine, and this is it. All the work of the laborer and the plowman and the slave is feeding the spirit of enterprise.
And the spirit of enterprise scout is facing east.
He's facing east.
And then the other scout that's in that formation is facing
west. Tedescan. Tedescan is a Lenape. Let's go by the spirit of enterprise that we talked about. So Tedescan is a Lenape sachem. He was a Lenape king.
Okay.
Went up to Easton to meet with the proprietors of Penn. This is William Penn's children, his sons. William Penn was known amongst the Lenape as being a negotiator, one who they can come to win-win terms with, right? But after he passed, the proprietors of Penn were just like any other colonist in his interactions with them. I can stand over here. So what happened was, Tedescan, the Penns had all these titles to land. Some were generated by sachems who didn't have the authority to title the land away. Some were just forged claim, they didn't have any legitimacy, and some were legitimate. Okay, like the ones William Penn had worked out, some were legitimate.
Yeah.
So there was supposed to be a big meeting between several sachems of the Lenape, as well as the people of the Longhouse, the Haudenosaunee. I think some Susquehannock were present, right? And this was in eastern Pennsylvania. Tedesca never made it back. He died on the way back, smallpox. So it's easy to assume, it's easy to visualize. He was given bedding with smallpox infected in him.
Yeah.
So we ultimately don't know what Tedesca agreed to. But Samuel Thompson, the first Secretary of the United States, he actually wrote the Constitution. His name is not Samuel Adams. I met one of his descendants too. I want to say it's Samuel Thompson. He was Tedescan's recorder during the meeting.
Okay.
When Tedescan got up there, Tedescan had been involved in other negotiations. And the colonists had a recorder who wrote down everything that was said and agreed to. So afterwards, after that negotiation, when the colonists were making moves that the Lenape were like, hold up, we didn't agree to that. The colonists were like, hold up, we had a recorder who wrote everything down. Look, this is what we agreed to. So when Tedescan went to Easton, he was like, first he was like, yo, I'm not in the authority to agree to anything. I just want to see what deeds y'all have, see which ones are legitimate, and then I'm gonna go and report back to my people. Because you remember, the Queens made all these decisions, you know? But they kind of, you know, through alcohol and tobacco, and they coerced Tedescan. Like, nah, man, let's just settle this thing right here, right now. So then Tedescan was like, all right, if we're gonna do it right here, right now, I want a recorder too. I want a recorder so that, you know, when y'all try to run after we meet, and y'all try to say, oh, we said A, B, C, I want to be able to say, no, we said X, Y, Z, right? So, but again, Tedescan seems to have been given smallpox. It's how you just gonna pop up and catch smallpox randomly, right? Given smallpox, he died, he never made it back. This guy, was it Charles Thompson? Maybe it's Charles Thompson.
The recorder.
The recorder.
Yeah.
Who ended up becoming the first Secretary of the United States, right? And just to show you there was probably some foul stuff in it, Charles Thompson was asked to write the official history of the birth of the United States.
Oh, wow.
Right? It would only make sense because he was the secretary, he was the writer. He said, nah, I'm not going to, because like just the long and the short of it is so much fuckery involved in it. If y'all don't want to hear it from me, y'all better get someone else to write. So what fuckery is he talking about? A big part of it probably was how this Treaty of Easton went down. But it was he who returned to Philadelphia.
Okay.
And he said, Tedescan has died, but before he died, he agreed to all terms of all the treaties, and he signed off on them. And so, y'all got to get out. That's the Treaty of Easton is what they justified expelling the Lenape out of Lenape and making them have their own Trail of Tears and go west of the Alleghenies.
And so that's why he's there. That's why
and to like, you know, a lot of their art. Like if you were to just look at it, you'd be like, wow, a Native American in the Wissahickon in Scout's pose. You know
looking
what I mean?
west toward the Allegheny.
He's looking
almost
west,
like
watching his people march.
Right, almost like putting him up on a pedestal for like leading his people west.
And
it's a mockery.
It's a mockery.
It's a gaslighting.
It's a gaslighting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they put it on the Queen's Council Rock. Remember, we said up there was where the queens meet.
Yeah.
Down by the Lenape-Hana, or the Delaware River today, in the Delaware Valley, is where the kings meet. To me, like if you go there, there's no vibes, there's no energy. It's just this implanted William Penn narrative on top of an industrial wasteland.
Yeah.
All the vibes, all the geomancy, all the ley line network grid. It's on this 9-mile road. You know?
We should go hit the next spot.
All right.
Yeah.
Did you want to, let's talk about the Spirit of Enterprise on camera while we're here?
Do you want, yeah.
Go ahead,
I
get
think
in the
we should
shot.
do that while we're here. So, the angle that you look at the Spirit of Enterprise, it's, you know, it's important. When you start on this side, right, you see a giant, right, a man bigger than life, bigger than us, right, and he's holding a caduceus, which is Imhotep's staff. It's the staff with the intertwining serpents. We can see the serpent's head right there. You also see the wing disc on top, right?
Yeah.
But the serpents have left the staff. One of the serpents winds down here and wraps around a Lenape or an indigenous person. Do we know if it's supposed to be, we'll say an Algonquin, right? He has locks. Here's his head. He's wearing an apron. Here's his legs and his feet. Right? And
So just to be clear, so where are you saying now?
And this is his hands.
That's the face.
His hands are holding up the giant. Actually, what's he doing, Mike?
I don't know.
He's playing with balls.
He's playing with balls. He's playing with
balls, right?
It's amazing. When I look at this, I don't see it. When I look at it through here, I see it.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't know what that says about. But like I was like, I don't see it before. When I look through this lens, I'm like, I see him. He's lying on his back. I see his face.
His arms are going up. He's playing with balls. Here's the serpent coming down, wrapping around him. Apron, legs, feet. Right? And this is his hand. And you're right.
It's hard to see, but
but you can kind of see.
I see it
from the
now.
angle. This is the eye socket.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There's the nose. And
There's the mouth.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. All right. And on his feet, it looks like he's upholding an eagle, right?
He's upholding the spirit.
The other serpent is wrapping around this giant character who's in Scout's pose.
Right.
So it's telling you he's got a Native American spirit or Native American energy, but he's looking east.
He's looking east.
He's looking east in contrast to the Deeskin, who's in Scout's pose looking west.
And
watching his people leave Point Paradise. So remember when we were up at the 9-mile marker, we were saying this is Point Paradise. That's where that statue is. And so it's like he's watching his people leave.
Is he watching his people leave their Jerusalem, metaphorically, or like
I would say
parallel?
so. That's a great yes.
And here, like this scout is looking out over the east to claim their
Get
Jerusalem.
Jerusalem.
So there's like this liminal space between the two.
This is the 9 Mile Road.
And it's the 9 Mile Road.
This is what I'm saying. This is, yes. Doing. Exactly.
Bing, 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 bing.
This is the 9 Mile Road. This is the 9. This is,
Uh-huh.
and another word, another name we can name this 9 Mile Road is the Lenape Road to Hell.
Which is why they were doing so much magic on it, because in a liminal space, like you can manipulate so
There we
much.
go.
Right.
This is
And
it.
that's why this is a gaslighting. This is why.
Uh-huh.
So I'm intrigued by this. There's I don't know the history, but that's in honor of the assassination of President Garfield.
What?
Now, I'll be honest, there's all kinds of art on the other side of the Schuylkill I
Right.
haven't even got to.
Right.
Oh my word.
Because there's
this-
another pedophile statue
Oh God.
on the other side too that I've read about but haven't gotten to personally. But it's like this what's the mythical characters with hooved feet?
Oh, the goat with the goat
Satyrs?
bodies?
Satyrs. A satyr holding a little child. On the
Whoa.
other side, I haven't even gotten there
Right.
yet. So I haven't got to that statue
On the other side of this
on
ridge.
the other side. And now you even see here amongst Spirited Enterprise, there's a whole bunch of other statues I haven't even
Right.
and emblems and
Oh
stuff.
yeah, I got
We
them
hadn't
all.
even got to hadn't even got to that.
Did you see
You know.
Minerva and the owl?
Minerva and the owl?
But yeah, let's
I did get it, but I didn't get to pay
let's look
attention
on the
first.
other side.
Let's walk. Right.
Was she Prudentia? What was the value label under her?
So then when we get on this side, the identity of the Algonquin. I'm not gonna say it's a Lenape for
Yeah.
sure, right? But that Algonquin, because I would say all Algonquin have this prophetic birthright that the colonists wanted to be a part of their conquest for the New Jerusalem.
Ah.
So this Algonquin, you can't see him now. His identity is lost.
Yeah.
What was his hair on the other side has become what appears to be semen coursing through,
This right here.
yes, coursing through a giant penis. That's
Ejaculation.
right.
Okay, so there we go.
So it seems to be ejaculating. This is a giant penis now. Ejaculating this seed in the image of an eagle. Right?
Huh.
And
Because it's the same texture. We're seeing, like, artistically, language of the muse's way.
image of the muses, exactly.
What did it say the poet does what? The dreams. The poet creates the dreams.
Huh.
So this is like sculpture is like is three-dimensional poetry.
Huh.
So okay.
This is more like pornography than poetry.
It's very intense. And right, you see the penis is circumcised,
Ah, oh yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
So that's this whole Judeo retake of Jerusalem.
Huh.
You
Ooh.
know?
Well, the circumcision is also like that's the symbol of the covenant.
Ah,
The covenant
right,
between
right.
the Jewish people and God in their story.
Huh.
And so, like, it's an agreement. It's our agreement.
Okay.
Agreement with the evil.
There's a conversation that I remember from civil rights class in college about what's the difference between pornography and art, and I forget which judge took that one on. But I remember something about like if like the desecration of the sacred. And so when I say, you were saying poetry and I
Right.
said pornography,
Right.
like it just like the whole point of this is like the hidden message is like desecration of something
That was
to
once sacred.
that was
Yes.
once sacred to create to create an empire
Yes.
of enterprise.
Yes.
And it's taking spirit and it's almost desecrating spirit
Yeah.
for the sake of harnessing her or his power to what is enterprise? Like what does that even mean?
That was
Business?
the word I tried to look up in that old English. Remember we went to the farm?
Right.
And they were like, what's the word y'all want to look up?
You're like,
Enterprise! But it was so vague. It wasn't even really clear.
Well,
but
do you remember what the definition was? I don't know.
Business?
At Effort Cloister.
Effort a cloister?
That's
we went to, what was it? The Fry.
The Fry Farm.
The Fry Farm.
Andre Farm, and then we went to the Effort Cloister afterwards.
Oh, wow.
And they had a old dictionary.
Oh. And that's where you looked up enterprise?
Yes, we attempted to. But
Nice.
it was kind of, it wasn't a definition that stood out in my mind.
Right.
So Amor Patria, that's one of the emblems.
That's love of the Father.
Love of the Father, right? But I just saw the root word for like patriarchy. It's like, I just read it as love of the patriarchy.
So this whole little plaza is called the Memorial of American History.
Oh, right, yes, we're standing on it.
Yes.
I can't see anything. Oh, right, I wanted to see that one. Oh, it's abundance. Oh my gosh. Wow.
That was good that we had that natural.
All right. So, all right. Now, having seen that, I would say one of the things I reflected on a lot was there was so much art and archetype symbols there. You kept asking me, Ross, what's that? What's that statue across the street? Where? And what stood out to me was the number of times I said, I don't know. You know, I think it really speaks to when we say Philadelphia got 5,000 pieces of registered public art. And yeah, we're scratching the surface, man. That's, that's my visit there with you really brought that to my awareness that what we're decoding, it really is the surface, What
It really
your
is.
what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, my first thought was the scope of what the spirit of enterprise was. Like, I thought it was a statue, and I didn't realize that it was an entire plaza built upon the river, with multiple places, multiple statues, and the way the whole thing was laid out. Like, it was, the scope of it was surprising to me. And then secondly, the nature of it. I've heard your deciphering of the primary statue in the middle of this plaza, and I had a flavor of what the style was of the overall location. But when I saw it with my own eyes, and when I looked at the backdrop for the statue, and the statue is the center, like everything is built around that statue, is there's a mocking, there's it felt mocking to me. Like it wasn't like on first glance it's not mocking, but when you take in consideration, like, I mean, this is from the entire idea behind it was of the financial elite families that built, the empire of the United States, and they are the purpose of this plaza was to honor the spirit of enterprise within the American people who built it. And here we are, the multi generations later of the the financial elite families that are really benefited off the labors of so many other people. And it was kind of like, thanks for doing all this stuff for us. Here's your park. And at
Mm.
the same time, we're telling you what we did the whole time. And the whole thing, and when you put it in context with the greater story of the usurping of the land, of the wilderness, of the 40th parallel, where the judgment of Judgment Day would take place. When you look at it from that scope as well, you realize the diabolical and the mocking and the gaslighting of it, because they were this is our ode to the brick builders or the bricklayers, and this is to the
Right.
poets, and all of the different peoples that participated either amongst their own free will and those not those forced into labor. It was you built this, and we say thank you to you, but the whole thing felt very, very it felt sinister to me, and it felt uncomfortable. And though it was beautiful, the craftsmanship of making it was fantastic, and then the irony of the small groupings of, they're homeless guys sleeping right on it, as you have all of these other people, current participants in the spirit of enterprise, exercising as they're running down the path, riding their $2,000 electric bikes. There was a real sense of irony there for me. The whole
Yeah.
thing felt like it's a tricky, the entire 9-mile path, all the way down to the Rodin Museum. It brought up a lot of complex, to me, it brought up the complexity of being alive in this time, and having an awareness of what this culture is we are in. An awareness being we are born into it, so we're part of it, but then also a recognition of what we're part of, almost to a lesser extent, maybe the shock which was shown in the eyes of the queen in that graffiti.
Mm.
There's a shock, whoa, what am I a part of? I'm,
Right.
none of us think of ourselves as part of the building of our own prison.
Mm.
But when you realize all of the things of the lifestyle, of all of the things that is required, and part of even of being in a baller's paradise.
Mm.
It's easy to say I'm in the baller's paradise and point fingers, but it's we all kind of are part of it. And that's this discomfort of the recognition, I'm not separate from it. I've been born in it. I
Mm.
almost feel I made this reference in a video I made the other day. In one of the Batman movies, the character Bane, who was born into the prison, and then he climbed up to the top of it. He was I was born in this prison, and this, you made me. And there's this recognition, which I feel what I felt going into spirit of enterprise, of feeling that I was born from this. And as
Mm.
much as I want to point my finger and say that's not me, it's not that simple.
Mm.
And I think that's true for all of us. If we're on a computer, if we're participating in any way, that to me, on a less big picture, but more of an internal being human, that's part of the judgment. That's part of your own judgment of how am I participating in the system?
Yeah. Yeah. I will say too, how you spoke on the mockery. I hadn't really viewed that complex, that plaza that you were speaking on. I hadn't viewed it in that light until being there with you. where it is the plaza as a whole is kind of like it on surface level. It appears like a tribute to the workers, you know, the laborer, the priest, the poet, the artist, all the different occupations or crafts people can find themselves in working that feeds the spirit of enterprise, right? But I had never factored the idea that, right, it was the elite who had funded this plaza or this tribute, right? And that when you take it in that context, it is an extreme mockery. I often, on another level, I do often contrast the spirit of enterprise with the Tedescan statue, because it's one of, they're both the two statues I found in Philadelphia that are in Scout's pose.
Mm.
Tedescan's looking west, watching the Lenape walk on their trail of tears. Spirit of enterprise is looking east. And that kind of ties into Elias Boudinot, A Star in the West. Elias Boudinot being a big, like you say, who's writing this? Who's telling this story? Whose story is it? I think Elias Boudinot and his vision of what the United States was supposed to be, that a big part of it is his story. And Spirit of Enterprise and Scout's pose looking east, this vision Boudinot had of saying that the indigenous of this land had divine birthright or genetic birthright to fulfill the prophecy of creating the New Jerusalem and using them in the spirit of enterprise to reclaim Jerusalem. And when you look at what's going on with the United States, its Middle East policies, unconditional support of is it real, even when, you know, international morality might not be recognized by that nation. Well, what's going on with that? You know? So
Right.
I've always seen that dimension of where you say mockery and irony with Spirit of Enterprise. But you definitely help clarify deeper levels of it, of the mockery for me, you know? Yeah. So we then made our way down. Let me pull that map back up. Is this it? Yes, it is.
That's it.
All right, you see it? Lovely.
Mm-hmm.
So even on another level, right? Just in terms of we say the indigenous identity of the land. Once you get below the 40th parallel in the wilderness, it's all about, like you say, it's ball incarnate. You know, it's what we're in now. And if you keep going down, we get the big embodiment of that, which is the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Before we definitely got some footage down there too, but before we get to that, I will just point out that the Philadelphia Museum of Art was built on the most sacred earth mound of Lenapehoking. The tradition says what happens there happens with the full participation of the earth. And on top of it has been built a Greek temple. The Philadelphia Museum of Art is a temple to the muses, you know? And the story that is told at the Philadelphia Museum of Art going down to City Hall on that Ben Franklin Parkway. And it's told in the language of the muses. This is why I guess the research we're doing is so important and relevant, because who has taken the time to first pay attention to all of it, but then once you pay attention, learn the language of the muses, which requires that we study Greco-Roman mythology. We study architectural design. We study how numerology and sacred geometry creates archetypical symbols and how that's built into our design of life, you know, how we live. How many people are going to verse themselves in that language of the muses so that they can articulate in English what we're looking at, you know? And that's what we attempted to do down at the museum. Did you want to share anything before we jump into some of the footage?
Yeah, a couple things. This thing which we're doing right now by bringing awareness, and I made reference to this a little bit earlier with like the friction. What we're doing by bringing awareness to the conscious mind, both as, you know, you as an individual, me as an individual, and then anyone else who participates, like, you know, witnesses, and then everyone else, is we're taking things that exist in both the individual and the collective unconscious, and by bringing them forward, so we can see it, like the benefit that happens, or what happens is there's a collapse. And in the same way that this is why subliminal advertising works. The reason why subliminal the logic why someone would do subliminal advertising, like put like secret words or like hidden words or images in an advertisement, is they want the potential purchaser, they want to create an internal charge inside of them. It almost doesn't matter what the charge is, but when a person looks at any sort of advertisement which has a subliminal, there is a knowledge of the unconscious which the conscious does not have, and they're communicating with one another, and that's what creates the charge. That's just like the way consciousness works, and consciousness is just everything is consciousness. And so when someone sees subliminal advertising, that charge between like what the secret story in the background of the mind and what the front mind sees, like that charge collapses, and that charge is used by advertisers to increase the likelihood of someone buying a product or service, because a product or service is positioned to like solve a problem, and that charge is added to make the problem seem more heightened. So when we go through, all of us go through this process of, as you said, as you just mentioned, like, you know, who's got time to go and learn all of these techniques and to go about it? Like, no one does, because part of how the system was set up, the indoctrination is set up so that human beings look at something a certain way. I mean, all indoctrination, we square the mind. That's why you wear the mortar cap on your graduation, you know, when you graduate, is so that you
Box you
see
in.
the world. They box your head, so you see it a certain way, which would, for the typical person, it would stop them from being able to see or learn what you were just describing, which is like, let me learn the language of the muses, which then enables for like all of this like subliminals to exist even stronger. So when we talk about this, when you talk about this, when I talk about, when anyone talks about these things, and we bring them into awareness, It's not just like bringing it for the awareness, it's for the collapse of that charge. And so that is what I see as the real value of all of this. I would also say that that is part of like what I described before of that like discomfort. That's part of the collapse. Like this is uncomfortable work. If you're
Right.
actually like listening to what we're suggesting, like you should like there should be a discomfort with this. And
Yes.
so there's that element I want to say. Now the second thing I want to say is what I found so interesting as I experienced in body the arrival at the back end of the art museum, and we parked um where the waterworks, the Philadelphia waterworks, where the first public utility was. Like that's a temple. Anytime we see a first, we're looking at a temple type offering, a first fruit, and particularly in context of the spirit of enterprise, particularly in context of the spirit on enterprise being built upon what was once like the most sacred, beautiful paradise type point on like what we're now calling the Schuylkill River, or what was once called the Manayunk, as you said. And what they've done is like what was once free, we're going to now make you pay for it. And we're going to make you pay for it out of a system which didn't exist before we invented it anyway. And it's like this is the priming of the pump. This is the beginning. This is the America's first yeah, now you're going to have to pay to survive. Once you didn't have to pay to survive, but now you're going to be paying to survive, like just to be alive. And like this is the beginning of like, yeah, well, this is your number. Like, no, you're not a name, and you're a name that's given before you've expressed who and what you are. We're giving you a number. Like this is the birthplace of all of that. And that was at the base of this mound which you described, which like at the top of it sits the art museum. And I'll say this one last thing. We talked a little bit about this when we were there, is like the idea of the Rocky Balboa statue,
Mm.
right? Like there's a real there's something like, culturally speaking, like, a lot of people probably let's say a large percentage of the population has no interest in going to an art museum, but that same position or proportion of the population, they might be like, hey, but this is where the Rocky statue is, and they made the Rocky statue in the movie, but now they've got it here. It wasn't real in the movie, but like now it's real here. Like there's this real strange blending. This is how you get into like deep mental magic, where they took something which was fake, the Rocky museum or the Rocky movie, where they showed a statue to Rocky in the movie, and then they put it on the real museum. Like all of that is happening right there, and there's a line of people to come. But the last thing I want to point out is the very fact that his name is Rock.
Mm.
He's a stonemason.
Mm.
This is from the Hollywood, this is all part, the more things change, the more they stay the same. It's the same level of of underhanded magic, of mocking, of like all of this stuff. And that's what's all around us
You want to know
in this.
for a lot of Philadelphians, the deepest irony with that Rocky statue, I gotta mention it, is that the real like character from Philly that would run through the neighborhoods and
Mm-hmm.
was just that man, from the hood. Like, who am I? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah.
Well, who?
And you're talking about the original Rocky and Rocky 1, like how he was
No,
presented.
I'm talking about the real life character, Joe Frazier.
I didn't know
You
that.
study the life of Joe Frazier.
Was he from Philly?
Joe Frazier, yeah, he's from
I
Philly.
didn't know that.
Oh man, there's really like if you say, was there a man who lived that life,
Okay.
right? Lived the life of Balboa, Rocky Balboa, and got, scrumped up from the hood of Philly, got in the ring with the champion and won. That's Joe Frazier. You tell me any other man lived that life. His gym should have been made a historic landmark with a historic marker, preserved, a little cultural museum, right?
Wow.
His gym is now a furniture store, man. Like, and not just any furniture store, but you know, the ones like the mattress outlets from the hood and shit. You know, it's ridiculous, man. It's such a mockery. And all and I guess why I bring it up, because all of that, his gym was made into a furniture store around the same time the Rocky statue was erected at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. You know,
I,
it's like, what are we memorializing? Like you say with this, we're memorializing a movie, an imaginary movie. Iconic though, it's, you know, I'm not gonna downplay the iconic nature of the Rocky movie, you know.
well, I
But
mean,
at the same time, in real life, real Philadelphia life, the one man who, if anyone lived that Rocky Balboa life and had an important legacy in North Philly, you know, this gym impacted many lives, you know? Yeah, for that to be a furniture store now with no marker, no recognition, and y'all got this Rocky statue at the foot of the art museum. Oh man. If
which
you're from
people
Philly
wait
and you
in
pay it,
line
no, I was
to
just
get.
saying, if you're from Philly and you pay attention, you can't help but feel away, you know?
So I think that what you just described, the Fraser Rocky, like that sort of kind of like paradox, but that model is what like the whole thing is about. Like that's history. There's like the real history and there's the fake history, and then there's like paying homage to something that didn't even exist, and then the thing that really did exist like is now like a rent to own furniture store. And we and like if you can see that, and we're all part of it too, like this is where like this unraveling, like to me, like the value of this is like the seeing it as it is, so it can then go and collapse. It can collapse because we finally, like, this is the judgment.
Mm,
This is judgment, in my opinion. um and so that to me, like going up there and then like to go in the, like what I really liked, because we talked a little bit about Rocky when we walked up there, and we go up and in the clip we're going to go and see, I think there might be some captures of the Olympiads up up at the in the top of the art museum. But the whole idea of Rocky fighting Apollo Creed, like Apollo,
right.
like, then we're like dealing with, like, this blending of like wordplay and like all of these ideas, of, so it's so deep. It's so deep, the
It's so
level.
deep. It's so deep what's going on at that art museum with the full participation of the earth, you know?
Yeah.
Y'all,
Yeah.
you want to jump into the footage?
Yeah, let's go right into it.
All right, boom.